My name is Mitch Emerson. A little bit about my background. I graduated from Cal Poly a long time ago when the red brick dorms were only first starting to be considered the old dorms, barely. After I graduated Cal Poly, I worked at Cisco Systems and Juniper Networks. I started off in software development. I moved my way up through to competitive strategy and into corporate strategy when I was at Juniper Networks. Corporate strategy, I was doing mergers and acquisitions, so looking at what types of markets Juniper wanted to go into and how do we get into those markets. Do we buy companies? Do we build? That type of standard decision. And after about 15 years or so at Cisco and Juniper, I started a company called Compete IQ with a partner. He was actually working with me at Cisco and at Juniper. We took what we were doing as far as looking at markets and looking at competitors and figuring out how to build competitive strategy with a corporate focus in mind. We built a system to do that, and we took it out to several large companies. After about 8 years at Compete IQ, I kind of got tired of being in the technology industry, decided to take a break. I went and took a little 5-year gap year. And I was working at a health club teaching swim lessons, and eventually I got some ADD and a little bit of itch to get back into technology. So I started helping out with the SBDC as a lead consultant and the CIE, and also now I'm at the County of San Luis Obispo as an IT manager. So my background, I've got a technology background and also a strong competitive and strategy focus for my background. Today I have 2 objectives. The first one is to help you understand the role of strategy in business decision-making. And the second one is to provide a tool to help you evaluate different options for how do you build strategy and how do you operate a company to grow. And actually have a little bit of a third objective, and that's to maybe share some pictures of dogs throughout the presentation here. I wanted it to be kind of fun. Sometimes strategy and things like that can get a little bit dry or boring, so we'll try to make it a little bit interesting as we go. Feel free to ask questions along the way. First thing, when you think about strategy, what does strategy mean to you? Anybody have any ideas, or what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of strategy from a business perspective? It's good that nobody has any answers, because that's what I'm here to tell you. I'm sure you do. And I Googled this before I came in, or actually now I guess I said I chat GPT'd it or I Gemini'd it, which has kind of changed. And there was like 65,000 different definitions of what strategy is. And I started thinking about how I approach strategy in my career and how I've looked at helping companies grow and how I work with it with companies here at the SBDC and CIE. And I tried to boil it down into something fairly simple. And what I came up with is strategy is the blueprint of a company that leads to lasting operational efficiency, profitability, and competitive advantage. So it's the thing that you look at as your company is growing, as you're building your company, that's going to give you some advantage in the field. It's going to drive how you're going to be profitable, and it's going to drive how you're going to keep that company running for the long term. And when you think about, oh, that one all of a sudden, when you think about strategy and growth, really what you're trying to do is you're trying to grow a company. And there are several different things that you can do that you can put into your company to make that company grow. And people face these options all the time. And it could be whether you're looking at a company or whether you're looking at an organization, you're faced with different projects and activities of what type of investments do you make in your organization to allow it to grow. You could increase your staff. You could increase the skills or the organization of your company so you can invest in your people. That's one thing you could do. You could put capital investment into the company. Money is one thing that a lot of people first think of when they go to start a company. It's like, how am I going to get money to get this company off the ground and to make it grow? You can expand customer awareness. Companies, have a hard time running if your customers don't know you're there and nobody knows about it. So you can make decisions to put into advertising, to put into marketing programs, to put into publicity programs. You can put time into those things. You can invest technology or operations in your company as well. So you can look at the processes that you're doing, and you can figure out how can you use technology to make those processes faster, easier, more efficient. or you can change your operations so that you do things in a more intelligent way. The other thing you could do is you could look at development or expansion. You can take your company, think of it as like you're a small store. You can open a second store. You can open a new location. You can go into new markets. So all of these things are ways that you can make your company grow. But there's one thing underlying all those different things that you do, and that's time. Different types of projects take different amount of time, and time is an investment. People a lot of times forget about that. They'll put projects, they'll think about things that they'll do, and they'll lose track of these different types of activities, may take different time, and may have different implications in the future. So when you think about growing, I always like to think about growth as starting from the future. A lot of people, when they're building companies, like to think about what can I do right now, and how is that going to build me up? But one of the things that you might want to think about is what your vision of your company is, which will lead to what your strategy of the company is, and then that will lead to the particular tactics that you can follow. So the vision of a company, it's kind of what's in your mind. It's the desired state of what you want that company to be, or what you want that organization to be in the future. And when you think about what you want your company to be or what you want your organization to be, you're going to build a strategy. And a strategy is that high-level definition or that blueprint of what you're going to do to enable you to reach that vision. And then tactics are the individual projects that you do that play into that particular strategy to support that long-term vision. So if you think about the direction that you're trying to go, and then see how that plays into your strategy, and that will give you some guiding ideas on what you can choose, how you can choose to spend your time and your money on those different things that we talked about a minute ago. Can I put more people into the company? Should I invest in technology? Should I expand? But start with the vision. Sometimes I equate it to going on a road trip or being in a boat. If you're going to be on a boat or you're going to go on a road trip, you're thinking about the destination that you're trying to reach, and you'll have a rough idea of the path that you want to take there, but your route might change along the way. And as I was thinking about that, something came to mind. One of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. Has anybody here seen Smokey and the Bandit? Yeah? So for those of you that haven't, it must mean I'm old, that's right. Smokey and the Bandit was a movie in the late 70s, early 80s. It's got Burt Reynolds, it's got Jackie Gleason, it's got Sally Field. The premise of the movie is there's a couple of guys at a truck show, and they are in Texas, and they're going to go to a truck show in Georgia. And they want to have beer at this truck show in Georgia, but Georgia is in a dry area. So they find Burt Reynolds and they tell him, we're going to pay you $80,000 if you can deliver a truckload of beer to the truck show that we're going to be at tomorrow. So you've got 28 hours to get to this truck show with a truckload of beer. And Burt Reynolds thinks about it and he decides he's going to do it. It's a challenge. And he looks at that. And if you think about this, so he's here, he's got this objective. He's got to get out somewhere in Georgia. He's got to get from Texas to Georgia. He's got to deliver this beer out there. The vision that he has, this is the vision that he's delivered. This is like one of the last scenes of the movie. He's delivered the beer. He avoided, there's a sheriff that's chasing him along the way. When he was on the way, he picks up Sally Field. Sally Field was this runaway bride that was trying to run away from the sheriff's son. But the vision that he has is he's going to be out there, he's going to get the girl, he's going to get the money, everything's going to be fantastic. That's his vision. The strategy of how they were going to do it was this cool 1978 black Trans Am with a screaming chicken on the hood and a big truck. So the strategy was, we're going to take this truck, we're going to fill it with beer, and I'm going to drive this Trans Am, and I'm going to take attention away from the truck by pulling the sheriff off and doing distractions so that nobody notices this big truckload of beer that's pulling across the Mississippi into dry counties. So the strategy doesn't say anything about the individual things that he's going to do along the way. The strategy is that high-level view of what he's going to use to achieve that particular vision of getting the money and getting the girl. The tactics are kind of the cool part. So as he's on the road and he comes to a break in the bridge, or he's got some problem in front of him that he's got to face, he decides to jump over the river. That's the tactics. So the tactics are the individual things that you do right now The strategy is the general approach that you're going to take, and the vision is your long-term view of what you want to be. Does that make sense? It's the easiest way I can think of to describe it with a simple movie. To put a more concrete example forward, this is something that might have been a vision, strategy, and tactics for Amazon several years ago. So when Amazon started, their vision might have been that they want to be the leading online marketplace that allows consumers to get any product delivered to their home at any time. So if you imagine a few people starting Amazon looking at how they're going to do, or what they want to do, or what they want to be, they might have envisioned that they want this marketplace so that anybody can get anything delivered to their home at any time. That's the vision. The strategy, who remembers how Amazon started? Or who's heard about how Amazon started? Books. So at the beginning, Amazon just sold books online. That's all that they did. So their strategy could have been that they develop an infrastructure, a logistics system, and a method to quickly deliver books to consumers. And then they take that model and they expand it to other products. Now, that doesn't tell you how they're going to sell those books. That doesn't tell you how the customers are going to get the products into their hand. It doesn't tell you how they're going to order and how they're going to ship. But it tells you that general high-level practice of how they're going to achieve that vision of becoming a leading online marketplace so that anybody can get anything at home at any time. Start with books, build an infrastructure, and then expand it to other things. The tactics are the things that they can do along the way. The tactics are the projects or the things that they have individual choices that they have to make and decide where do they want to invest their time, their money, their technology. Tactics could have been, they could have looked at developing an easy-to-use storefront and an inventory management platform. That's something that's very concrete, that can be turned into an individual project that can be executed on. They could have talked about developing and training a high-quality customer support staff. It's another thing that is an individual project that may have its own time frame, may have its own individual budget, may have its own individual support, and may have its own individual points along the way that they would check on. Another one could have been they have to build a scalable and fast computing infrastructure. They'll have to look at partnering. They'll have to look at launching a marketing campaign. So you build up this list of tactics as you go in order to support your strategy, and you have to make some decisions. It's like, how do I prioritize these different options that are in front of me to decide which ones I want to do first, which ones are going to be most effective, and how am I going to build my overall plan to achieve that strategy, to achieve that vision. Any questions on that? So real simply, strategy is the then that defines the now, and it's the what that defines the how. So strategy comes into play, and it's kind of that middle layer between the vision of what your company or what your organization, what you want it to be, and the individual choices that you're going to make along the way in order to get there and to help your company or organization grow. So you have a choice of multiple options or multiple projects that you can do. How do you choose the right one? That's something that I hear a lot when I'm consulting companies or even when I'm thinking about doing things myself. How do I choose the right path forward? Well, from a business perspective, the right path is the one that leads to the highest potential of business impact with the most efficient use of time and resources. And the key thing is there's not just one right path. There's multiple things that you can do, multiple paths that you can take. And a lot of people, I believe, get mixed up where they think the actual choice of that project is the important thing. But what I think is more important is you can pick any choice that you want, and it's about making that choice the right one. So once you decide to take an option or once you decide to start a project, it's what are the things that you are going to do to make that project a success. Making the choice itself is kind of arbitrary. There's different options in front of you, but it's how it gets executed. And in fact, you can have two different people or two different companies that pick similar options. One could be successful and one could be very unsuccessful based on their execution of it. So what's more important when you make a decision on which option to take or what investments you want to make in your company or how you want it to grow It's more about getting yourself in that mindset of making that the right decision. Who's ever heard this? Well, that's the way we've always done it. Why should I choose to do something if we've always done it this way and it seems to have worked? Ultimately, making no decision leads to no growth. Because what happens if you don't make any decisions, if you don't make any change? What happens to the environment surrounding you? That environment changes. That means your competitors are making adaptations and they're changing. The market forces are changing. Your customers are changing. So simply doing what you've been doing for the past doesn't necessarily always lead to the best results in the future. It may be a choice to continue doing what you've done in the past after you've looked at the options. And if you make an intelligent choice about it and you do some analysis and you decide, yes, what I'm doing is the best thing right now, that's a little bit different than saying, I'm not going to choose. We've been doing this and I'm going to blindly continue forward. So you've got these options that you can pick. You've got different things that you can do, different projects or different activities to support your strategy. How do you evaluate them? Because they could be very different things. And what I've come up with is what I call the 5 C's of strategic decision making. And these are the parameters that I look at when I'm trying to think about strategy and how to grow. The first one is, for any particular option, what's the calendar? How much time is it going to take? If you have a list of different projects that you can do, or different activities or different investments that you can make, you want to consider how long is it going to take you to implement that with the resources that you have. It could be something that you could do in just a few months. It could be something that takes a few years, but you want to have an estimate of how long that particular project is going to take, because you need to know how long are your resources going to be occupied, how long is it going to take you to see a return on that particular project, what type of staffing are you going to need, what type of resource, and how long are those resources going to be occupied for the duration of the project. The other one is the cost. So look at your different options and figure out what the cost of each of those options are. Those are things that you can put side by side regardless of what type of project they are. You can look at the time it takes. You can look at the cost that it takes, because how much something costs may change your decision or may affect your decision on priority between different options of which you could follow. The third one is complexity. So the complexity of a project relates to how many different moving pieces are involved in it, or how many different people, how many different organizations do you have to organize, how many different outside sources may you have to go to, what type of regulation may you have to face, are there any certifications that you need to do, how complex is this particular choice to make? If you've got multiple choices, you may want to pick ones that are less complex before you pick ones that are more complex. Or you may want to be aware that ones that are more complex are going to take more detailed planning and more thought that goes into them up front in order to make them successful. The other parameter is how much contribution is that particular project going to make to your strategy. So again, thinking about starting from your vision that defines your strategy, that defines the individual options, you've got different options. You may have options that contribute more towards your particular strategy, and then some that may contribute less or not at all. For example, let's say I'm trying to make a decision about expanding a store, and I could have an option that says, I need to hire a contractor, I need to get some building plans, or I need to do some site surveys, or I need to get some funding, or I need to figure out, what customers in that area. All those types of things contribute to that strategy of saying that you want to expand your store into other markets, as opposed to you can make a decision of, well, I'm going to change my pay scale. Changing a pay scale doesn't really contribute to that particular strategy. So when you think about your options, you want to think about how relevant those particular options are to the strategy that you have defined, and how much contribution do you think they're going to make. And then the last one is competence. And competence is within your organization or company, have you done this type of option before? Have you done this type of project before? Do you have the necessary skills so that if you were to perform a certain project or if you were to take on some sort of activity, do you think that you could complete it? Do you need resources from outside? Or is it something that you've never done, you've never had any experience with, so it's going to be very difficult to complete? Any questions on those? So the 5 C's that I look at are the calendar, the costs, the complexity of the project, the contribution, and the competence that you have within your organization. And I break those down into 2 different categories. Calendar, cost, and complexity are risk factors. The higher that those things are, the more likely it is that your project is going to be challenged. Or they're things that you're going to have to come up with mitigating plans for, or that you're going to have to plan more carefully for. So risk factors are the things that you need to take into consideration as you make your decision, because those are the things that are going to negatively affect the outcome of it. The contribution that a particular option makes and the competence that you have as an organization, those things are success factors. Those are the things that you have a little more control over or that are native to you or your particular organization. Those are like your strengths that are going to enable you to be more successful at the particular option that you choose. So when you look at these things, calendar, cost, complexity, contribution, and competence, there are ways, there are parameters that you can put on a variety of type of projects to make a level comparison ground, so you can start to evaluate which ones make more sense and which ones may have a more likely outcome for you, or how do you prioritize the particular options that you have. And you can break those things down into the ones that are risks that you'll need to build mitigating plans for, and you can look at success factors that take advantage of your natural strengths. Any questions on that? So let's say we've got a company. Back to my dogs here. And this dog, I'm going to call her Daisy because that's the name of my dog. She decides that she is going to open a dog toy store. Her vision is she wants to be the only store in the city that customers consider for unique dog toys. That's her vision. That's what she's seeing the future of her business. The strategy that she might follow to get there is she's going to sell custom-made toys through a high-density, Starbucks-like network of boutique outlets. So her goal is to have a pet store on every corner, a dog toy store, so that people start to associate quality custom dog toys, perfect puppy peripherals. That's a tongue twister, say that fast. So that's her vision and her strategy to get there. She wants everybody to naturally think. So kind of like Starbucks. You know, Starbucks follows that same sort of strategy. Their goal was to put Starbucks as prevalent as possible so that people could get to them easy. It was always in front of them. They saw it when you're at work or when you're out driving around or when you want coffee. The first thing that you're going to think of is Starbucks. Maybe not me, but a lot of people will. That's their strategy. So the tactics that she could take to achieve that strategy, let's say she's trying to define or to figure out how to grow and expand her business. She could open a new location. That's one thing that she could do to grow. She could put a marketing campaign in place, and she can advertise to get more people aware of her store and her products. She could raise funding. She could go get some money to help give her some capital to do other types of things, to build more stores, to hire people, whatever it is she decides to do. She can build a new product. You know, if she wants to have unique dog toys, she can build something new and exciting that she sells so that customers start to think about her in that sense. She can hire additional staff. This is just an example of different types of options that she would have for her business to fulfill that strategy of being prevalent in everybody's mind, so that when they think about dog toys, they think of her. And that's what allows her to be that store that she's got when she's the only store in the city that people think about. Questions on that? So with that, and thinking about those 5 C's, I'm going to give you 2 different ways that you can use those 5 C's to evaluate how to select options. And it kind of depends on what your style is. Are you a little bit more like on the artistic side, or are you a little bit more on like the math and science side? First way we're going to cover is the color model. It's a little bit easier, a little bit more straightforward. And basically what you do is you have your options that your business can take, and you rank each of your Cs as red, yellow, or green. Very simple. If a risk factor is a high risk, you rate it red. If it's a success factor and it's not really going to work, you rate it red. So you kind of rate what's the power of each of those individual options for your to play into your strategy. Then you look at the confidence and competence, your success factors. And you look at the ones that have green success factors. So the ones that you think are most likely to contribute to your strategy, or the ones that you have the most competence for. Those will be your higher priority options that you look at. And then the other risk factors are the things that may help break the tie between two particular options, or they're the things that you know that you're going to have to make some sort of plans for. So for example, let's say she goes through the exercise and she's got her options of her business on the left side there. She can open a new location. She can build a marketing campaign. She can raise funding. She can build a new product, or she can hire staff. She's got her Cs across the top there. You can see on the right, I've got the success factors separated out from the risk factors. And just an example, maybe opening a new location, it's going to take a long time. So she rates that one red, because she's going to have to find a site for it. She's going to have to get some permitting. She's going to have to build a building. She's going to have to go through inspections. It's going to take a while to get there. It's fairly expensive to open a new location as well. So the cost on that one would be rated red. Complexity, it's a pretty well-defined process. There's different things that you have to do to open a location, but it's something that's been done over and over. Maybe she already has a contractor, so that one she feels she's kind of in the middle with. Contribution, that one's rated high, because remember, her strategy is to have a location, our high density locations throughout the city. And competence, maybe this is going to be the 7th store that she's opened. She's like, I've done this before, I know how to do it. So she has green ratings there. Similar type of process for each of those different options that the business has. So you come up with a chart that looks kind of like this. And remember, a few minutes ago, I said the highest priority, the ones that you want to think about first, are the ones that have the highest success factors. So looking at this here, which one do you think might be the first option that she'd want to consider? Which one? Opening a new location. Thank you. So yeah, it's got high contribution to her strategy, and she's also got high competence at it. So this is an option that she may want to consider first. This doesn't mean it's going to be the most successful option. It just says in the list of one, it might be the first priority to consider, to start doing some investigation into, to build out a plan for, to see what it might look like. Following that same logic, which ones might be the second one, or which might be the second option to follow? Hiring staff. Why hiring staff? Exactly, star student. So there's two options here. You've got hiring staff and raising funding. They're both kind of similar. They've got a high level of rating for a success factor, and they've got a medium level rating for a success factor. So they're the same. So then you'd look over here on the risk factors and decide which one is lower risk. And in that case, the second option that she might want to consider would be hiring staff. And the third option might be raising funding. Now, again, this isn't saying which particular project she should go out and do first, second, and third. It's saying which ones she should evaluate or which ones she consider. There's multiple things that you want to look at whenever you make a business decision. This is just one tool that can help figure out and help you prioritize different options that may seem very disparate at first. Any questions on any of that? A little bit different model, a little bit more precise than just using colors. And this one I call a math model. So it's very similar, except instead of picking colors for each of the ratings, create a relative scale or a rubric. So for each of your 5 Cs, define some parameters that you can rate from 1 to 5 for each of your options. And then you're going to take your success factors and divide them by your risk factors. Some people like looking at numbers a little bit more. Some people like looking at colors, but it's doing the exact same thing. So this one here, you may want to look at you may want to define for each of those success factors what a 1, what a 2, what a 3, and what a 4, and what a 5 is. So for example, for time, you might look at your projects and you say, if this project is going to take me less than 6 months, I'm going to rate it as a 1. If it's going to take me about a year, I'm rating as a 2. If it's going to take me a year and a half, I'm going to rate it as a 3, and so on. And this is arbitrary, but come up with some sort of consistent method that you can rate each of your options on, that you can assign a value of 1 to 5 for. Any questions on that? And then you follow kind of the same process. You'll go through and you'll rank each of your C's on that 1 to 5. And then a little formula that I came up with is take those success factors, multiply them together, and divide them by your risk factors. And the higher values will give you the ones that you might want to consider first. It might look something like this. And you can put this in Excel so that you can change your values and see how it might change. But we've got our same 5 options over there: opening a new location, create a marketing campaign, raise some funding, build a new product, hire new staff. She's gone through and she's rated each of those particular things on 1 to 5. And she's come up with a score or a priority on the right side over here. Which one came up as the first one? Opening a new location, kind of similar as before. Second option, hiring staff. Third one, raising funding. Again, 2 different methods to get to the same thing. And again, the idea here is you've got different options that you can take. You're looking at how they support your strategy to support your vision, and you're trying to decide which particular option or which particular path do I want to take? How do I want to prioritize? How do I want to prioritize those? Or what do I want to consider along the way? What are the risk factors that I'm going to have to look at for each of those decisions? Questions on any of that?
Daisy's your dog?
Daisy is my dog.
Daisy is completely in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Looking at this stuff. Daisy is good at opening locations. Daisy is good at raising funding. Daisy is terrible at new products, which is the essence of the business she's getting in.
Might be.
So she's got, she should open a Starbucks or build.
There you go. And that may,
the wrong business.
and that may come, that's actually a very good point, because you may look at things here and that may not even be an option. And then you'd have to go back and am I in the right business? Am I going in the right direction? So, and it goes back to what I had said earlier. You know, if you're looking at your particular business options, do they support your strategy? And does your strategy support your vision? And if not, you're right. You might want to change your business, you might want to change your vision, or you might want to change your approach.
Let's say her skills don't match her vision.
Or her skills don't match her vision. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
You would multiply the top and then
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And again, it's an arbitrary value. It's just a way to help you look at different options.
It's systematically comparative.
Exactly. It's a systematic way to compare things. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Maybe Daisy could have a focus group.
There you go.
Find out other dogs, see what the products are.
There you go. And that's it, you know, and if you don't have the native skills inherently, what do? You hire a contractor. You consult. You get somebody to come in and help you with the skills that you don't have. Is there anybody here that started a business, or is anybody that know anyone that started a business that knew absolutely everything and had skills in absolutely everything about that business? No.
That's the business I started the business that I knew the most about.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Most about the technology and the market. That's the one I started.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, go into a business that you know. It increases your chances of success. But yeah. Any other questions? So key things to keep in mind here. This is just a single input into helping decision making. It's not a predictor of success. It's just a way to baseline your different options and to compare them and figure out priorities for which ones you may want to pursue looking at and prioritizing for your business. The second thing is things change. By the time you end up making a decision, the markets could have changed, your customers could have changed, the environment could have changed. You need to be prepared to pivot and reevaluate again. Just because you decided something a year ago was going to be the right thing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right thing today. Good example of that, what happened in March of 2020? COVID. What happened to somebody who decided they were going to open a restaurant in February of 2020? Probably not a very good option in April of 2020. So be prepared to look at what's happening in the market, what's happening with your customers, what's happening with the environment, and be prepared to pivot and change if necessary. And the third thing is make a decision. You can decide to keep doing the same thing that you've been doing if you analyze it and you figure out that might be my best thing to do. But not making a decision and continuing blindly down the path that you were following before, again, your environment and your surroundings are going to change, and it's going to end up leaving you as a business behind. Your competitors are going to improve, your customers' tastes are going to change, their preferences are going to change, costs are going to change. There's a lot of those things that change, and the more that changes around you, if you don't change, you're going to actually end up decreasing. So summary. First thing to do when you're looking at the direction of your business and how do you make your company grow, define your corporate vision. Where is it that you see your company being 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What is it that you want that company to be? When you've got that vision, set the strategy or the blueprint that enables that vision. When you've got your strategy, look at the tactical tactical activities that can support that strategy, and then prioritize them, execute, and reevaluate as you need. And the key thing again, it's not about making the right decision. There's a lot of different decisions and a lot of different paths that you can take. It's more about once you make a decision, make the effort to make that the right decision. Thank you. Questions?
Do you think Jeff Bezos, when he started, sitting at, you seen that little picture of him sitting at that desk in that little office? I don't know if you've seen that. Do you think when he started with Amazon and he was selling books, was his vision at the very beginning, as you presented, to have this full service, wide range of products, and he just simply tactically used books to start the process? Or do you think he just had a passion for selling books and he did that, and then he discovered and it grew accidentally in a way?
A little bit of both. So I think, that he might have had a passion for selling books. He might have had a passion to start some sort of online business that he wanted to make it easy for people to get, books was his example at the beginning. And then after going through that, your vision can change. He might have started off saying, I'm just going to be a bookseller. I'm going to take Barnes and Nobles out of business. That might have been his first thing. But then as the business started going, he might have said, well, look, there's now a whole new broader opportunity that I have that's opened up because of what I've done here. So now my vision is something different. And that goes back to that being able to pivot and reevaluate. When your company starts going down a certain path, you're going to find that you have new capabilities, you're going to open yourself up to new markets, and your vision is going to change. So again, I wouldn't recommend that you start with one vision and you stick with that for the rest of your time. But as your company grows and as the market changes and adapts, your vision should change as well, and it should be modified. Now, if at the beginning your vision is something over here, Amazon is going to be an online marketplace and let anybody buy anything that they want at home, and then after a while he decides, I'm going to lead tours in the Amazon, on a case-by-case basis, maybe that's an entirely different business. That's not a vision for that same one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think it's a combination of both. I think people start out with a vision here. They go through their business, they find out new skills, new technologies. Now their vision grows a little bit, or maybe it shifts one direction or the other. It's a continually evolving process. And businesses are continually evolving. I mean, if you look at any successful business, a lot of them don't start with just one thing and continue on forever and ever with that one thing. They adapt, they change, they grow.
I like your presentation. That was really good, Mitch. Thank you.
Thank you.
So over my work life, I've had opportunities maybe similar to what you were saying in terms of like being at big companies and working on corporate strategy or competitive strategy. And it seems like one of the first things that happened in my experience is that people get Michael Porter's work on competitive
Yeah.
strategy, and everybody's looking at it and sharing it. And I guess what I wanted to see is ask you what you thought. Is it seems like it works a lot, but if you get into a big company with a lot of big egos, there's a lot of fighting. So you get consultants.
Yeah.
People. So my question is like, as you went through that, I'm going to assume that you had a similar experience in your experience with working on strategy. What were your main takeaways that my impression is they came through in your presentation from looking at Michael Porter's work. And then one of the main takeaways I took right at the end of what you said, intentionally or not, is that even if this stuff doesn't work step by step, now I've gone through, working with the group here in San Luis Obispo and being both an investor and still working on our startup. It seems to me that if I just took that thing and I worked with, the Greenpoint team on their recent work, is that they've either done it intentionally or not, but I would encourage all the rest of the teams to force your company to do this exercise that you just took us through. And even if you don't use it, the fact that you did it and you can talk to each other and you kind of have a similar sense of the direction you're going would be extremely helpful.
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned Michael Porter, because I've read a lot of Michael Porter, and that's actually what we based when me and my partner started our company. We based it a lot on Michael Porter. And it was tactics that we were doing, or activities that we were doing at both Cisco and Juniper from a competitive strategy position. And the reason that we started the company was we found that in our roles at both Cisco and Juniper, we ended up kind of doing the same thing, a little bit of this, but then some other things about, competitive positioning and, market analysis and some of the other things. And we found, kind of like you said, that in a big company, we had trouble convincing some of the executives that, that was the right path. We were doing it, but it was never really structured or formalized. So we built our company, CompeteIQ.io, where we basically took the competitive processes that we were doing. We built a large database and we came up with a methodology for it. And we went to customers and at the beginning, we thought we were a software company, that we'd go out and we'd sell this software and this database to companies in order to, do their competitive strategy and do competitive sales enablement. And what we found as we started talking to companies was they said, "That's outstanding. Can you do it for us?" So we kind of became an outsourced CI organization, and we used our software to deliver the service to companies. So we became kind of like an outsourced competitive consulting company. But you make a good point, whether you go through a lot of this through the rigid structure of writing things down and evaluating it, or whether you kind of do it in your head. A lot of times, like, I won't create the particular charts and rate the colors and everything, but in the back of my mind, I'll be thinking about, how long is this going to take? How complex is this particular project? Am I, naturally adept at doing this particular thing? Is this particular project going to help towards my end goal? But I do also start with a vision. Here's what I think I want to be, whether it's like in my job today where I'm working with the county and we're doing some large projects. I've got this vision of what I want the software to be, or what I want our system to be, or what I want our processes to be. And now that I've got that vision, I put together a little strategy in the back of my mind, and that kind of is my guiding principle as I go through the different things that we can do. Now, at a large organization, of course, you're not always in control of the budget. You're not always in control of the practices. You're not always in control of the choices, but use it within your domain of control to help you figure out what you can and can't do.
We have a question online
All right.
from Colin. He said, Hi, Mitch. I like your logical way of making decisions. Where does customer feedback tie into your decision rating process? I'm sorry, decision ranking process.
So good question about where customer feedback ranks in. So I would look at, whether a particular project you're doing, and if customer feedback is important for evaluating how successful you were, you can use that for like pivoting or reevaluating. So if you do a particular project and you take it out to your customers and you get feedback, you may find this particular project was a success, it wasn't a success, or there's things that I need to do to modify or change in order to make it more effective. So feedback would be the part that comes in sort of after you've done, either after you've done that particular project, or would feed into the next iteration as you adapt and grow. So maybe in this particular case here, one of the decisions could have been build a new product. Well, I could have done a product in the past that got horrible customer feedback, and I can use that in my process when I come up with a new one. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. You had the quote on the last slide. I think it said it's not about making the right decision, it's about making your decision the right one. And I was just curious, how far that goes when you make a decision, whether it is time to pivot or whether it. I'm just kind of trying to understand what making your decision the right one means.
So basically what I mean by that is a lot of people get focused on if I've got options A, B, C, and D, one of them's the right one, and I've got to pick the right one. And if a project fails, they're like, oh, I picked the wrong thing. It has nothing to do with that. Because again, another example I like to give is, anybody in here play sports? Or like football or baseball or anything? Let's say you play football and you can have a playbook for football. You can have two teams with the exact same playbook, and they could play against each other, and one team could be successful and one team could lose. They could be doing the exact same things, but it's how they execute those particular plays. It's the skills that they have. It's the heart that they put into it. It's how they monitor or readjust as they're going through their project. Those are the things that I mean by make it the right decision. Put a plan, whatever you decide to do, put a plan together, think it through, execute, and along the way, evaluate and readjust as necessary.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Like learn by doing, in the spirit of Cal Poly, right? Learn by doing. I mean,
Exactly.
It's not a failure if you don't, it's only a failure if you didn't learn something. And just know, like I think Mitch's point is really spot on. It's, you could get into analysis paralysis. Notice he didn't have stuff going out to the 10 to the 9th decimal point in femtocentimeter, whatever the hell it is, right? He just said, look, pick some colors, pick some indices, and notionally be able to compare this to that, to these, to those, right? And so what happens a lot in decision is you'll basically grind a tactical point into pulp. You'll grind it into talcum powder. You know why? Because you can. Because you have
Right.
all this information and data on something that's interesting but not compelling. And where I schooled and do this, that's called majoring on the minor, right? Don't major on the minor, like major on the major. Like the major is make a decision, orchestrate it, and that's the word I would use. Like Mitch's like entire thing is all about orchestration, and understand that there's feedback nodes and sensors. I mean, your body is a living sensor, right? Like what you learn every nanosecond impacts what you do the next nanosecond, like very Zen-like, right? But true, right? It is. So this framework is ridiculously, well, I would say it's simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
Right. And so what comes with ease is the number of times you're able to articulate and communicate, like you were saying, like the same lexicon to each other and make decisions either individually or as a group. Because sometimes as a CEO, you got to say, the group thinks all this, but you know what? I still want to go right and the buck stops here and I'm going to take that decision. And when you take that, it's pretty lonely, but you have a lexicon to explain back to your team why you might have agreed or disagreed with certain elements of it. And I'm not saying CEO hubris, override, right? But you were at Cisco and Juniper.
Yeah.
If John didn't want to do it, the hell, and
Yeah.
Volpe didn't want to do it, and
Yeah.
Rebecca didn't want to do it, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Done. Right? It doesn't matter what you said or Molly Chang said or that whole team that was in there saying, wow, Jupiter's going to kill us here or Broadcom's going to kill us there. So sometimes, like, I get amped up about this, it just matters to make the call and learn on the fly. Like if you keep running to the right side and they have TJ Watt over there, you're probably not gonna get a lot of yards. So guess what? You run to the left side or you throw a pass, right? It's sort of that football playbook that says adapt on the fly. I think this framework will give you maybe that was really pink and not red, or maybe that was
Yeah.
orange and not yellow. That's less important than having something to go back to and reference what led you to that decision, right? And I think strategic decisions are the most difficult to make because they have so many degrees of freedom, right? You can 2 + 2, 4, or 22, or 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, like depending, am I talking binary, hexadecimal, or, algebra, right? 2 + 2 could be 4 if that's your framework, but 2 + 2 could also be 22 if you're talking tens and ones, right? And so to know the framework, I think, is essential. Strategic decisions are not easy.
Correct.
They are not easy. And that's why you'll see books to the hundreds. You admit 65,000 definitions of
Yeah.
6,500 definitions of strategy. It's like, well, what the hell is it, right? It's ethereal, but it's essential. To me, it's the glue that takes the vision to the operating plan. Right?
Exactly.
It's that thing in the middle, that meso layer. So, and I've done similar things to Mitch, but not as well as Mitch has, and this was like simplifying for me it was like very liberating.
Thank
So
you.
Thanks, Mitch.
Sure. The other thing about this that I think everybody can relate to is imagine back to when you're graduating high school and you're going into college and you've got these options of different colleges that you can go to. A lot of kids think, I've got to pick the right college because if I don't pick the right college, I'm not going to get the right job. I'm not going to have the right career. I'm not going to be successful. The decision of which college, I would almost argue, is arbitrary. Pick any college, and whichever college you end up going to, make that experience exceptional through the networking that you do, through the classes you take, through how you apply yourself, through how you learn. That's what's more important. It's the actions that you take after making the decision, not the decision that you make. Anything else? Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming out today.